All right, welcome everybody to Keys to the Kingdom. I'm Marissa. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Shabbat. Hope you're having a nice weekend. I know my day's actually been pretty good. If it can be calm and relaxing and peaceful, then that's a plus for me. Hey, Sandy, Rahim, and LV. Glad you guys can make it. I'm so excited that you're here. I'm so glad you were able to make it. So tonight we are continuing our Bible reading of the whole Word, and we're going to do our little portion, which is going to be Genesis 12 through 22, and then if we have time, I'm sure we'll have time. We're going to do a little bit of the Book of Yasher because I know that a lot of you wanted to continue reading the Book of Yasher. So we might get through some of that. I will put another exclaimer. I will probably put an exclaimer in every single video. But no, the Book of Yasher is not considered inspired by the Holy Spirit. We just use it just like we would a historical text. Okay? So I have to put that out there on every video. Otherwise, they'll have my head. So, one or two things before we get started reading. Is anybody that's watching right now, did anybody on here see the video that we did when we were discussing in Genesis about Noah and the flood, who did not get the DVD set that we gave away? I gave away a 2-disc DVD set for, it was 2-disc DVDs having to do and pertaining to the, Noah, the flood, the Nephilim, the fallen angels, and everything during that time. Is there anybody watching who didn't get a DVD that day and wanted one? Let me know in the comments, and as long as you're within the North American continent, I'll be able to mail one to you. Let me know if you want one, if you're interested, if you did not during that video having to do with Noah. I just want to make sure everybody that's able to get one gets one, because there's a lot of information. Rahim, I haven't received mine yet. You're probably everybody who requested one is going to be, I have one person that I know of for sure that got hers today. So you'll probably be getting it today. If not today, then it'll definitely be Monday. Okay, Sandy wants one. Okay, Sandy, just private message me your address with your information, and I will mail one as soon as I get an opportunity. I just want as many people to have it as possible. I really enjoy it, and I'm sure there's probably most all of you are not familiar with Trey Smith, but he makes a lot of videos pertaining to these subjects, and I just love his enthusiasm. I love his enthusiasm for the Word, and I don't know, there's just something about that time, that those days of Noah, that I feel is very important, because Yeshua said, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be when the Son of Man returns. And I don't know, I think that's kind of important to know what was going on during the days of Noah. So I just want everybody to get one who wants one. Anybody who wants one is able to get one. Just let me know, and I will be happy to mail one to you. You'll just have to private message me your address so I can send it out. But I do enjoy them, and I'm sure you will enjoy them as well. Is there anything else I had to say? Let's go ahead and get into our reading. This week's portion, Genesis 12 through 22, is mostly covering the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And if you've been here since we started reading the Bible, you will know and see and be aware that the people living in the land of Canaan, the people living in that general Middle East vicinity, were pretty much ruled mostly, and it started with Nimrod. And Nimrod is the one who created he was the man behind the creating of the Tower of Babel and all of these mighty cities. And it's important to know where these leaders came from and why Sodom and Gomorrah ended up being the way that it was. Not really all that long after the flood, people just started going back to the fallen angel religions, I guess you could say, and ways of living, which would be against God, obviously. They started going back to the fallen angel ways after the flood. So, and these Nephilim, these giants, were also in the land after the flood, after Noah. We can kind of guess, we can kind of, assume different things and kind of try to guess if God flooded the earth, how did these Nephilim giants still end up in the land after the flood? And, it's kind of guessed that maybe it was just the wife of Ham who had Nephilim DNA in her, and that's how they were able to continue on. Some say, now there's no evidence that the angels came back down and mated with humans and created Nephilim again. There's no place in scripture that says that. But so there's a few different hypotheses of how this happened, but nevertheless it did happen. And Sodom and Gomorrah was definitely one of those cities that was ran by these mighty men, or men of renown, as the Bible calls them. So let's go ahead and start in chapter 18. Now, again, this is the life of Abraham, and God has called Abraham out of idol worship. Abraham and his family were selling idols. They were in idol worship because they were ruled over by these Nephilim, by these giants who were kings over these mighty cities and fortified cities, and that's how they made their living, was selling idols to people. And so he called him out of idol worship and is bringing him into the land. And God's doing something. God is trying to do something in this area that desperately needs to be cleansed out. So this is going to be continuing on with the life of Abraham and the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. So let's see what goes on in chapter 18. So the Lord appeared to Abraham by the oaks of Mamre as he sat at the entrance to the tent during the heat of the day. And he raised his eyes and looked, and there in front of him stood 3 men. On seeing them, he ran from the tent door to meet them, prostrated himself to the ground, and said, "My Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, please don't leave your servant. Please let me send for some water so that you can wash your feet. Then rest under the tree, and I will bring a piece of bread. Now that you have come to your servant, refresh yourselves before going on." "Very well," they replied. "Do what you have said." So 3 men are coming up towards the tent of Abraham, and he recognizes them as not just being any men. Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah and said, "Quickly, 3 measures." So he's being very accommodating to them. He's playing the hostess, and he wants to treat them with the utmost respect. And he tells Sarah, "Quickly measure 3 measures of the best flour, knead it and make cakes." Abraham ran to the herd, took a good tender calf, and gave it to the servant, who hurried to prepare it. Then he took curds, milk, and the calf which he had prepared, and set it all before the men. he stood by them under the tree as they ate. They said to him, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" He said, "There in the tent." He said, "I will certainly return to you around this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son." So these men are giving Abraham the message that Sarah, this time next year, will be with a child, and it's going to be a son. So obviously these are not just any men, because they're able to see what's going to happen in the future. They're able to prophesy and see what's going to happen. Sarah heard from the entrance of the tent behind him. Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in years. Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed to herself, thinking, "I am old, and so is my Lord. Am I to have pleasure again?" The Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and ask, 'Am I really going to bear a child when I'm so old?'" So the man is asking Abraham, why did she laugh and say this? And then he says, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" "At the time set for it at this season next year, I will return to you, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah denied it, saying, "I didn't either laugh," because she was afraid. Of course she was afraid. He said, "Not so. You did laugh." I mean, he just called her out on it. "Not so. We heard you laugh." But you have to understand, the first time they told Abraham that he was going to have a son, Abraham laughed. And now they're coming to Abraham 1 year before they're going to have a son, and Sarah laughs. So they both laughed, but most people just remember Sarah laughing. But it's interesting because they named their son Isaac, which means laughter, because it was very funny that God was going to bring about a child while they were so old and beyond childbearing years. It's pretty humorous when God does stuff like that. The men set out from there and looked over towards Sodom, and Abraham went with them to see them on their way. The Lord said, so the men set out and Abraham went with them. But now it says, the Lord said, "Should I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do?" Because, you know, every time before God does something in the earth, he always tells his prophets or his holy people. He will warn them and tell them what his plans are and what he's going to do before he does them. "Should I hide from Abraham what I am about to do, inasmuch as Abraham is sure to become a great and strong nation, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed by him? For I have made myself known to him, so that he will give orders to his children and to his household after him to keep the way of the Lord and to do what is right and just, so that the Lord may bring about for Abraham what he has promised." So he finds favor in the eyes of the Lord. So the Lord sees it fit to let Abraham know what he's going to do prior to destroying Sodom and Gomorrah. He's like, after all, I'm going to build a nation through his seed, and he's going to teach my ways through his offspring. So I see it fit to tell him what I'm going to do very soon. The Lord said, "The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin is so serious, that I will now go down and see what their deeds warrant, whether their deeds warrant the outcry that has reached to me. If not, I will know." Now it's back to the men. The men turned away from there and went towards Sodom, but Abraham remained standing before the Lord. So this is interesting. The men leave, but Abraham is still standing before the Lord. Is it just standing in the presence of the Lord? Abraham approached and said, "Will you actually sweep away the righteous from the wicked?" Maybe there are 50 righteous people in the city. Would you actually sweep away a place and not forgive it for the sake of 50 righteous people? So Abraham is pleading on behalf of the innocent people. But you have to remember, see, people think, oh my gosh, Abraham, he's just so concerned with the people who are living there, who are innocent. Abraham has reason to be concerned. His nephew Lot lives there, and Lot's family, and Lot's, everything that Lot owns, his nephew and his family are still in Sodom. So he has reason to be concerned for any innocent that are in these cities. Will you actually sweep away a place away and not forgive it for the sake of 50 righteous who are there? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous along with the wicked, so that the righteous and the wicked are treated alike. Far be it from you. Shouldn't the judge of all the earth do what is just? The Lord said, if I find in Sodom 50 who are righteous, then I will forgive the whole place for their sake. Abraham answered, here now I, who am but dust and ashes, have taken it upon myself to speak to the Lord. But what if there are 5 less than 50 righteous, he said. The Lord said, I won't destroy it if I find 45 there. He spoke again to him, what if 40 are found there? He says, for the sake of 40, I won't do it. Then he says, I hope the Lord won't be angry if I speak, but what if 30 are found there? And the Lord says, I won't do it if there are 30 there. He says, here now I have taken it upon myself to speak to the Lord, but what if 20 are found there? And he says, for the sake of 20, I won't destroy it. He said, I hope the Lord won't be angry if I speak just once more. But what if 10 are found there? He said, for the sake of 10, I won't destroy it. The Lord went on his way as soon as he had finished speaking to Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. So check this out. There were 3 men. There were 3 men that came to Abraham. And then it says, the angels went away to Sodom and Gomorrah, but Abraham stayed in the presence of the Lord. And now in chapter 19, it says, the 2 angels came to Sodom. So this is where it is hypothesized that 2 of them were angels, and one of them was maybe the angel of the Lord, which is Yeshua, because he says he was standing in the presence of the Lord, but there were 3 men, but 2 angels went to Sodom. So it's kind of interesting. The 2 angels came to Sodom that evening when Lot was sitting at the gates of Sodom. Lot saw them, got up to greet them, and prostrated himself to the ground. So even Lot, even though Lot is kind of a worldly guy, and so is his family, and so is his wife, because we know what happens to his wife, they're kind of worldly, but they still have it in them to recognize these holy angels for who they are, and to show them the respect that they deserve, and to humble themselves before these angels. He said, here now, my lords, please come over to your servant's house. Spend the night, wash your feet, get up early, and go on your way. No, they answered, we will stay in the square. But he kept pressing them, so they went home with Lot. And he made them a meal, baking matzah for the supper which they ate. But before they could go to bed, this is where it gets kind of disturbing. Before they could go to bed, the men of the city surrounded the house. And I'm pretty sure that's why Lot didn't want them staying in the square, because he knew what a debaucherous, abominable place that these holy men were in and what would happen to them. The men of the city surrounded the house, young and old, everyone from every neighborhood of Sodom. They called Lot and said to him, where are the men who came to stay with you tonight? This gets disturbing. Where are the men that came to stay with you tonight? Bring them out to us. We want to have sex with them. You have to understand, these people of Sodom and Gomorrah were the offspring of these Nephilim. So it was already in their sick, twisted DNA, going back to when the fallen angels came down and mated with human beings and they created these mighty men. So as you can see, they're very interested in these angels who are coming to visit, and they want to procreate with them, even though how are these men going to procreate with them? I don't know. But it's pretty twisted. I mean, you can't deny, I mean, I don't know how anybody can take this out of context and say, oh, it wasn't angels, it was the sons of Lot that mated with, the sons of, it was the daughters of, I'm sorry, not Lot. A lot of people say it was the daughters of Seth who mated with the daughters of Cain. Listen, you can't create giants that way. And here again, you have a similar scenario going on. So instead of God flooding the entire earth, he's going to spot treat these areas that have become cancerous again. Instead of the entire planet becoming cancerous, he's going to spot treat these areas that are now succumbing to the cancer that was happening during pre-flood. That makes sense? So it's sick, it's twisted. I'm telling you. So bring them out, we want to have sex with them. Lot went out with them and stood in the doorway, closing the door behind him, and said, please, my brothers, do not do such a wicked thing. Look here, I have 2 daughters who are virgins. Please, let me bring them out to you, and you can do what seems good to you. So he's trying so hard to stick up for Lot. Clearly is a worldly man who has basically no backbone. He has no control over his household or those around him, and apparently not his neighbors either. But he was so desperately trying to, keep them from doing anything to these angels because he knew what had happened with the fallen angels coming down and mating with the daughters of men. And what caused the flood? He knew what caused the flood. He's hanging out with Abraham, who has been passed down this knowledge from Noah and Shem and, so on and so forth. So Lot knows, oh my God, they cannot come in here and try to do this with these angels. God is going to flood the earth again. Here, take my daughters, because at least if you have sex with my daughters, it's not going to create Nephilim, who are giants, and they basically eat humans and destroy the entire earth. It's just mass chaos right now. So here, take my daughters, and you can do with them whatever seems good to you. But don't do anything to these men, since they are guests in my home. He probably doesn't even want them to for sure know that these were angels. He's like, they're guests in my home. Here's my daughters. Stand back, they replied. This guy came to live here, and now he's decided to play judge. So these men of Sodom, who are, just lunatics, and they're like, look, this guy comes here to live here, and now he's deciding to play judge. For that, we'll deal worse with you than we did with them. Then they crowded in on Lot in order to get close enough to break down the door. But the men inside reached out their hands, brought Lot into the house to them, and shut the door. So the angels bring Lot out because they're closing in on Lot, and they bring Lot inside and they close the door. Then the angels struck the men at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they couldn't find the doorway. That'll stop them. The men said to Lot, do you have any people here besides yourself? Now these are the angels speaking to Lot. Do you have anyone here besides yourself? Whomever you have in the city, son-in-law, your daughters, your sons, bring them out of this place, because we are going to destroy it. So they came. The purpose for them going there was to get Lot and his family out. So he's like, look, who do you have here? Whoever you call family, you need to bring them out because we're about to destroy this place. Gather all your family, whoever you feel necessary to come with you, because we're going to destroy it. The Lord has become aware of the great outcry against them, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it. Lot went out and spoke with his son-in-law. Lot went out and spoke with his son-in-law who had married his daughters. Sons-in-law, I'm sorry, it's plural. His sons-in-law who had married his daughters and said, get up and leave this place because the Lord is going to destroy the city. But his sons-in-law didn't take him seriously. Here we go again. You know, people before the flood didn't take Noah seriously. Now he's about to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. They still don't take him seriously. And this is what happens when you're worldly and you're stuck to the world. You won't listen to the warning signs. And stuff like this happens quite frequently, and I'm sure it's going to happen all throughout the last days when God is sending his warning to his people, get out. But they cling so much to the world. They're clinging to their material possessions, to their house, everything that they owned, that they won't leave and they won't heed the warning of the Lord. So they didn't take him seriously. When morning came and the angels told Lot to hurry, get up, they said, and take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here. Otherwise, you will be swept away in the punishment of the city. But he dallied. So the men took hold of his hand, his wife's hand, and the hands of his 2 daughters. So they're just kind of like, you know, you really want to leave? You know, the angels literally had to grab Lot's hand, his wife's hand, their daughter's hands, and get them the heck out of there. These people, I'm telling you, this was Lot and his wife and his family. They were worldly. Lot and his family is the perfect example of lukewarm believers. They're not on fire for God. They're not walking with the Lord like Abraham. They're not completely in the world and debaucherous and sinful like the men of Sodom and Gomorrah. But they're on the fence. They just don't want to really be hot or cold. They're kind of like, meh. They're lukewarm. Lot and his family were lukewarm. Perfect example of a lukewarm family. So they dallied. So the men took hold of his hand, his wife's hand, and the hands of his 2 daughters. The Lord was being merciful to him and led him, leaving them outside the city. When they had brought them out, he said, flee for your life. Don't look behind you, and don't stop anywhere in the plain, but escape to the hills. Otherwise, you will be swept away. Lot said to them, please no, my lord. Here, your servant has already found favor in your sight, and you have shown me even greater mercy by saving my life. But I can't escape to the hills because I'm afraid the disaster will overtake me and I will die. So you have the angels telling you where to go, and you're like, oh, I don't want to go there because I'm afraid. It's unbelievable. Look, there's a town nearby to flee to, and it's a small one. Please let me escape there. Isn't it just a small one? And that way I may stay alive? So basically, Lot was afraid of escaping to the hills because he had probably become so worldly that he was dependent on people, it seems like. He wants to escape to a city, not the hills. So the man replied, all right, I agree with what you have asked. I will overthrow the city of which you have spoken. Hurry and escape to that place because I can't do anything until you arrive. For this reason, the city was named Zoar, which means small, the small city that he escaped to. By the time Lot had come to Zoar, the sun had risen over the land. Then the Lord caused sulfur and fire to rain down upon Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the sky. He overthrew those cities the entire plain, all the inhabitants of the cities, and everything growing in the ground. But his wife looked back. Check this out. God's in the process of destroying the cities with sulfur and fire. But his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a column of salt. She looked back. She looked back because she missed it. There was a part of her that missed it. Abraham got up early in the morning. Now we're switching over to Abraham. Went to the place where he had stood before the Lord, and looked out towards Sodom and Gomorrah, scanning the entire plain. There before him the smoke was rising from the land like smoke from a furnace. But when God destroyed the cities of the plain, he remembered Abraham and sent Lot out away from the destruction when he overthrew the cities in which Lot lived. So it was because of Abraham that Lot kind of got saved. He found favor. It was pretty much because he was the family of Abraham. But, had he not been, he probably would have gotten swept away in the disaster as well. Lot went up from Zoar and lived in the hills. So now he leaves this little city and he goes up into the hills anyway with his 2 daughters because he was afraid. You see how much fear Lot has? This man was worldly, didn't know the Lord, and had a lot of fear in him. He wasn't full of faith at all. He was completely opposite of Abraham. Abraham was a man of faith, took God at what he said, just listened to God every time there was an instruction. This guy, on the other hand, is just fearful at every turn. He's fearful because he doesn't hear the Lord or listen to what the Lord says or obey his word. So he was afraid to stay in Zoar, this little town, so ends up fleeing to the hills anyway. He and his 2 daughters lived in a cave. The firstborn said to the younger, so I wonder where they got this mindset from. These girls grew up in Sodom and Gomorrah. Pretty sure they weren't, the sweetest little things you'd like to have as daughters, but the firstborn says to the younger, our father is old, and there isn't a man on earth to come into us in the manner customary in the world. Come, let's have our father drink wine, then we'll sleep with him, and that way we'll enable our father to have descendants. So they think that because Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed, that the entire earth was destroyed, probably because God had destroyed the entire earth before. And so they're taking it upon themselves, and obviously these girls are not in tune with God either. They're doing it their way and how they think they're going to make this work. So they plied their father with wine, and this guy Lot is clearly very easy to seduce. So they plied their father with wine that night, and the older one went in and slept with her father. He didn't know when she laid down and when she got up. So he's passed out? I don't know. The following day, the older said to the younger, here, I slept last night with my father. Let's make him drink wine again tonight so you can go in and sleep with him, and that way we'll enable our father to have descendants. They plied their father with wine that night also. And the younger one got up and slept with him, and he didn't know when she laid up or when she laid down or when she got up. Kind of an odd scenario. Thus, both the daughters of Lot became pregnant by their father. So we have this ancestral lineage coming from Lot's daughters. The older one gave birth to a son and called him Moab. And you will see very frequently throughout the rest of Scripture, Moab and the Moabites they play a key role and end up being a thorn in the side of Israel. Called him Moab. He is the ancestor of Moab to this day. And the younger also gave birth to a son. She called him Ben-Ami. He is the ancestor of the people of Ammon. So the Ammonites and the Moabites to this day. So you will see them basically where modern day Jordan is. This is where the Moabites and the Ammonites were. And these were the descendants of Lot. So chapter 20 says, Abraham traveled from there towards the Negev and lived between Kadesh and Shur. While living as an alien in Gerar, Abraham was saying of Sarah, his wife, she is my sister. So here we have this again. Abraham is calling Sarah his sister because he has to. These people are these are not law-abiding citizens. They do what they want when they want, and they make their own rules. So he has to lie and say that it's his sister because they might kill him, because this is obviously something that they're known to do. She is my sister. So Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech, just like he did when they went down to Egypt, in a dream one night and said to him, you are about to die because of the woman you have taken, since she's someone's wife. Now Abimelech had not come near her. So he said, Lord, will you kill even an upright nation? Didn't he himself say to me, she is my sister? And even she herself said, he is my brother. In doing this, my heart has been pure and my hands innocent. God said to him in the dream, yes, I know that in doing this your heart has been pure, and I too have kept you from sinning against me. So this is why I don't let you touch her. Therefore return the man's wife to him now. He is a prophet, and he will pray for you so that you will live. But if you don't return her, know that you will certainly die, you and all who belong to you. Listen, when God wants to get a message across, he will come and tell you. God will speak to anyone, holy, not holy. If he's got a message to give across, he will get it across. Abimelech got up early in the morning, called all his servants, and told them these things. And the men became very afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, why have you done this to us? How have I sinned against you to cause you to bring on me and my kingdom a great sin? You have done these things to me and that are just not done. Abimelech went on asking Abraham, whatever could have caused you to do such a thing? Abraham replied, it was because I thought there could not possibly be any fear of God in this place. You see? It's very hard to tell in this world. There couldn't possibly be any fear of God in this place, so they will kill me in order to get my wife. But she actually is also my sister, the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. So technically, he wasn't lying, because Sarah was actually his half-sister. The daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and so she became my wife. When God had me leave my father's house, I told her, do me this favor. Wherever we go, say about me, he is my brother. So he technically wasn't lying. Abimelech took sheep, cattle. So here we have this happening again. God is about to bless Abraham once again, just like he did when he took him down to Egypt. So the king, Abimelech, took sheep, cattle, male and female slaves, and gave them to Abraham, and he returned him to Sarah his wife. Returned to him Sarah his wife. Then Abimelech said, look, my country lies before you. Live where you like. To Sarah he said, here, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. That will allay these suspicions of everyone who is with you. Before everyone, you are cleared. So he blesses him, and he gives him clear reign of the land and says, stay here. We'll, make sure that nobody does anything to you guys. Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and the slave girls so that they could have children. For the Lord had made every woman in Abimelech's household infertile on account of Sarah, Abraham's wife. All right, chapter 21. The Lord remembered Sarah, as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. So this is obviously a year later, okay? So, because remember, the angel said a year later, at this time, Sarah will conceive and have a son. He did as he had promised. Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the very time that God told him he would. Abraham called his son, born to him, whom Sarah bore to him, Yitzhak, which is Isaac. That's the Hebrew way to say it, is Yitzhak. Abraham circumcised his son Yitzhak when he was 8 days old, as God had ordained him to do. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac, which means laughter, was born to him. Sarah said, God has given me good reason to laugh. Now everyone who hears about it will laugh with me. I mean, it is pretty funny. 100 years old. And she said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Nevertheless, I have borne him a son in his old age. The child grew and was weaned, and Abraham gave a great banquet on the day that Isaac was weaned. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom Hagar had borne to Abraham, making fun of Isaac. So you have Ishmael now making fun of Isaac. So Sarah said to Abraham, throw this slave girl out and her son. I will not have this slave girl's son as your heir along with my son Isaac. Abraham became very distressed over the matter of his son. Now you have to understand, this was his firstborn son, the only son that he had ever known. I think he was 13 when Isaac was born. But God said to Abraham, don't be distressed because of the boy and your slave girl. Listen to everything Sarah says to you. So God is actually in agreement with what Sarah's doing. Listen to everything Sarah says to you, because it is your descendants through Isaac who will be counted. But I will make a great nation of the son of the slave girl, since he is descended from you. Which is true to this day. Abraham got up early in the morning, took bread and a skin of water, and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder. And the child, then he sent her away. After leaving, she wandered in the desert around Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she left the child under a bush, and went and sat down, looking the other way, about a bow's shot's distance from him, because she said, I can't bear to watch my son die. So they're running out of food and water. She's in Beersheba, and she's basically getting away from him because she's like, I can't bear to see my son die. And, I'm probably about to die as well. So she sat there looking the other way, crying out and weeping. God heard the boy's voice, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what's wrong with you, Hagar? Don't be afraid, because God has heard the voice of the boy in this present situation. Get up, lift the boy up, and hold him tightly in your hand, because I am going to make him a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. So she went, filled the skin with water, and gave the boy water to drink. We can only go 3 days without water. And then you're gone. God was with the boy, and he grew. So God was with him, This is still the descendant of Abraham. So his seed is still there, but this is not the son of promise. But God was with the boy, and he grew, and he lived in the desert and became an archer. He lived in the Paran desert, and his mother chose a wife for him from the land of Egypt, because after all, Hagar was an Egyptian woman. So she chose a woman from Egypt to be his wife. So now we have the mixture of the line of Shem and the line of Ham coming together, because Egypt was Mitzrayim, which is from the line of Ham, and Abraham was a Shemite, so it was from the line of Shem. So through Ishmael and Hagar choosing this woman from Egypt, well, actually, Ishmael was half Hamite and half Shemite. And now they have these descendants that are coming after him. At that time, Abimelech and Pekol, the commander of his army, spoke to Abraham. They said, God is with you in everything that you do. Therefore, swear to me here by God that you will never deal falsely with me, or my son or my grandson. So he has the fear of Abraham because he sees the Lord is with him. So he wants to make a covenant with him, just in case. But according to the kindness with which I have treated you, you will treat me in the land which you have lived as a foreigner. And Abraham said, I swear it. Now Abraham had complained to Abimelech about a well which Abimelech's servants had seized. Abimelech answered, I don't know who has done this. You didn't tell me, and I only heard about it today. Abraham took sheep and cattle and gave them to Abimelech, and the two of them made a covenant. Abraham put 7 female lambs from the flock by themselves. Abimelech asked Abraham, what is this meaning of these 7 female lambs you have put by themselves? He answered, you are to accept these 7 female lambs from me as witness that I dug this well. This is why this place is called Beersheba, well of 7, or well of oath, because they both swore an oath there. When they made a covenant at Beersheba, Abimelech departed with Pekol, the commander of his army, and returned to the land of the Philistines. Basically, Abraham is surrounded by giant nations. God is putting him smack dab in the middle of these Nephilim cities and these Nephilim offspring. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba, and there he called on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. Abraham lived for a long time as a foreigner in the land of the Philistines. Chapter 22, guys. After these things, God tested Abraham. He said to him, Abraham, and he answered, here I am. He said, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Yitzhak, and go to the land of Moriah. There you are to offer him as a burnt offering on the mountain that I will point out to you. Abraham got up early in the morning, saddled his donkey. Look at this. Look at this. God tells Abraham, take your son, your only son, whom you love, and there you will offer him as a burnt offering on the mountain. Abraham gets up early in the morning. He just knows that everything that God says is true and right and good, and he literally doesn't even question it. He gets up early in the morning to do what God says. He just loves God. What did Yeshua say? You have to love me more than your husband, more than your wife, more than your family, more than your sons and your daughters. You have to love me above all else. And how do you know that Abraham loves him? Because he does what he says. He just doesn't even think about it. He just does it. Gets up early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took two of his young men with him, together with Isaac his son. He cut the wood for the burnt offering, departed, and went towards the place God told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham raised his eyes and saw the place in the distance. Abraham said to his young men, stay here with the donkey. Listen to what Abraham says. Stay here with the donkey. I and the boy will go there, worship, and return to you. You hear what he's saying? We're going to go up there and worship, and we'll return to you. He just doesn't have any doubts of what God's going to do. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. Then he took in his hand the fire and the knife, and they both went on together. So now it's just Abraham and his son going up to Mount Moriah. Isaac spoke to Abraham, his father, "My father, here," he says, and then Abraham says, "Here I am, my son." Isaac says, "I see the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham replied, "God will provide himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son." And they both went on together. They came to the place God had told him about. And Abraham built the altar there, set the wood in order, bound Isaac, his son, and laid him on the altar on the wood. Then Abraham put out his hand and took the knife to kill his son. He was going to go through it. He was going to go through with what God said. He had no doubt in his mind. There was no question. He never once questioned him. But the angel of the Lord called out to him out of heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." He answered, "Here I am." He said, "Don't lay a hand on the boy. Don't do anything to him, for now I know that you are a man who fears God, because you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." This was the promised son, his only son from his wife Sarah. Abraham raised his eyes and looked, and there behind him was a ram caught in the bushes by its horns. Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering in the place of his son. Abraham called the place Jehovah-Jireh, because the Lord provides. As it is said to this day, "On the mountain the Lord is seen." This is Mount Moriah, guys. The angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time out of heaven. He said, "I have sworn by myself, says the Lord, that because you have done this, because you haven't withheld your son, your only son, I will most certainly bless you, and I will most certainly increase your descendants to as many as there are stars in the sky or grains of sand on the seashore. Your descendants will possess the cities of their enemies, and by your descendants all the nations of the earth will be blessed because you obeyed my order." God has big plans for Abraham. He plans to take his descendants and spread them out. And he also has one big plan for one of Abraham's seed for the entire world. So Abraham returned to his young men, and they got up and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham settled in Beersheba. Afterwards, Abraham was told, "Milcah, too, has borne children to your brother Nahor." So his brother Nahor is having children. Uz, his firstborn, Buz, his brother, and Kemuel, the father of Aram, Hesed, Hazo, Fildash, Yitlaf, and Betuel. Betuel fathered Rivkah. So you have Abraham's brother having children, and them having children, and one of them fathers Rebekah, who we know will be the wife of Isaac. These 8, Milcah born to Nahor, Abraham's brother. His concubine, whose name was Reumah, born children also. So this was the concubine of Abraham's brother Nahor. And apparently he had a concubine whose name was Reuma, born children also. So Tevach, Geham, Tahash, and Makkah. These were all descendants of Abraham's brother, not Lot, but Nahor, his other brother. And I will point out here that his brother probably had a concubine because this was the ways of the nations. And Abraham's extended family. Let me just kind of bring this home for you. Abraham's extended family were still very worldly, and they were. Remember, he brought Abraham himself out of idolatry, and his father, Abraham's father, was an idol maker, and so all of his family was. Abraham was basically the black sheep. He was the one hearing from God. He was the one following God. He was the one following God's commandments. But his family were still worldly, and they were still following the traditions of the world. And I'm sure many of you have experienced this where, you are trying to follow God, you're trying to follow his ways, and your family isn't really on the same page. Well, listen, you're not the first one. Abraham had to go through this very same thing. He was the only one, he and his family, who were truly following the Lord and his ways. So that's probably why his brother had a concubine, because this was the ways of the world, to have multiple wives. So that's the end of this reading here. Do we have time for Yasher? Do you guys still want to read Yasher? Raheem says concubine, girlfriend. Concubine, yeah, that's basically what that meant. This was just someone. Look, you will see there is still traditions in. It's a little bit better because time has gone on, but there's a lot of people that live in these major Middle Eastern countries that believe that the husband, as long as he's able to provide for a second wife, that he's allowed to have as many second wives as he wants. But he has to be able to provide for her in these sorts of things, whereas back then, the concubine was kind of married to the man, but she was kind of just there, to have fun with, I guess. So yeah, I guess you could call her a girlfriend. But that was the ways of the world. And again, God at this point is trying to create a holy nation through Abraham. So there really isn't any other holy nations at this point in time, unfortunately. But that's what he's trying to do through Abraham. Let's see. Do we want to read a chapter or two out of Yasher? Does anybody want to do that? Let me know. Let me know in the comments. Do we want to read a chapter or two out of Yasher? Anybody interested? Crystal? Crystal wants to. Sandy says sure. So this part of Yasher, okay, Jessica says yes, Raheem says yes. All right, let's read a couple of chapters to give us some more backstory leading up to, so this is we're going to rewind a little bit back to the flood. This is chapter 6 of the Book of Yasher, and I'm just going to read a chapter or two, but it's, like I said, it gives us a little bit more history. So let's read a couple. Why not? So we're going to rewind a little bit going back to the flood. So at that time, after the death of Methuselah, the Lord said to Noah, "Go thou with thy household into the ark. Behold, I will gather to thee all the animals of the earth, the beasts of the field, and the fowls of the air, and they shall come and surround the ark." And thou shalt go and seat thyself by the doors of the ark, and all the beasts and the animals and the fowls shall assemble and place themselves before you. And such of them as shall come and crouch before thee shalt thou take and deliver into the hands of thy sons, who shall bring them into the ark, and all that will stand before you thou shalt leave. I don't know what it's saying. And the Lord brought this about on the next day, and the animals and the beasts and the fowls. So he's bringing the animals to Noah. And Noah went and seated himself by the door of the ark, and of all flesh that crouched before him he brought into the ark, and all that stood before him he left upon the earth. And a lioness came with her 2 whelps, male and female, and the 3 crouched before Noah. And the 2 whelps rose up against the lioness and smote her, and made her flee from her place. And she went away, and they returned to their places and crouched upon the earth before Noah. And the lioness ran away and stood in the place of the lions. And Noah saw this and wondered greatly, and he rose and took 2 whelps and brought them into the ark. And Noah brought into the ark from all the living creatures that were upon the earth, so that there was none left but that which Noah brought into the ark. 2 and 2 came to Noah into the ark, but from the clean animals and the clean birds he brought 7 couples, as God had commanded him. And all the animals, the beasts, and the fowls were still there, and they surrounded the ark every place that rain had not descended until 7 days after. And on that day the Lord caused the whole earth to shake, and the sun to darken, and the foundations of the world raged, and the whole earth was moved violently. So there was a major earthquake going on during that time. And we know that this is true because you will see on maps of the earth, there's literally like splits down the earth where it had one point opened up and then closed back. The foundations of the world raged, and the whole earth was moved violently, and the lightning flashed, and the thunder roared, and all the fountains in the earth were broken up, such as was not known to the inhabitants before. And God did this mighty act in order to terrify the sons of men, that there might be no more evil upon the earth. And still the sons of men would not return from their evil ways. And they increased the anger of the Lord at that time, and did not even direct their hearts to all this. Look, this is exactly what's going to happen again in the book of Revelation. Same thing. He's going to bring this is going to happen. It's going to get worse and worse, just like birthing pains. And he's allowing these people to see, are they going to turn to me? But no, they're going to continue to harden their hearts and get further and further away from God. Noah and his household and all the living creatures that were with him came into the ark on account of the waters of the flood, and the Lord shut him in. And all the sons of men that were left upon the earth became exhausted through evil on account of the rain, for the waters were coming more violently upon the earth, and the animals and beasts were still surrounding the ark. And the sons of men assembled together, about 700,000 men and women, and they came to Noah at the ark. And they called to Noah, saying, Open for us, that we may come into the ark, and wherefore shall we die? And Noah with a loud voice answered them from the ark, saying, Have you not all rebelled against the Lord, and said that he does not exist? And therefore the Lord brought upon you this evil, to destroy and cut you off from the face of the earth. Is not this the thing that I spoke of to you 120 years back, and you would not hearken to the voice of the Lord, and now do you desire to live upon the earth? Basically, he had been telling you this for 120 years, and now all of a sudden, you want to get out of this situation? And they said to Noah, We are ready to return to the Lord. Now open for us, that we may live and not die. I think he's going to call their bluff. And Noah answered to them, saying, Behold, now that you see the trouble of your souls, you wish to return to the Lord? Why did you not return during these 120 years which the Lord granted you as the determined period? Now you want to return to the Lord? Now that things are getting a little bit too much for you to take? But now you come and tell me on account of your troubles of your souls. Now also the Lord will not listen to you, neither will he give ear to you on this day, so that you will not now succeed in your wishes. And the sons of men approached in order to break into the ark, to come in on account of the rain, for they could not bear the rain upon them. And the Lord sent all the beasts and animals that stood round the ark, and the beasts overpowered them and drove them from that place. So there was animals that were not supposed to go into the ark, that were still surrounding the ark, and they overtook these men that were trying to get into the ark. And drove the men, and they again scattered themselves upon the face of the earth. And the rain was still descending upon the earth, and it descended 40 days and 40 nights, and the waters prevailed greatly upon the earth, and all flesh that was upon the earth or in the waters died, whether men, animals, beasts, creeping things, or birds of the air. There was only remained Noah and those that were in the ark with him. And the waters prevailed, and they greatly increased upon the earth, and they lifted up the ark, and it was raised from the earth. And the ark floated upon the face of the waters, and it was tossed upon the waters, so that all the living creatures within were turned about. And great anxiety seized all the living creatures that were in the ark, and the ark was like to be broken. And all the living creatures that were in the ark were terrified, and the lions roared, and the oxen loud, and the wolves howled, and every living creature in the ark spoke and lamented in its own language, so that their voices reached out a great distance. And Noah and his sons cried and wept in their troubles, and they were greatly afraid that they had reached the gates of death. And Noah prayed to the Lord and cried unto him on account of this, and said, O Lord, help us, for we have no strength to bear this evil that has encompassed us. For the waves of the waters have surrounded us, mischievous torrents have terrified us, and the snares of death have come before us. Answer us, O Lord, answer us. Light up thy countenance towards us, and be gracious to us. Redeem us and deliver us. And the Lord hearkened to the voice of Noah, and the Lord remembered him. And the wind passed over the earth, and the waters were still, and the ark rested. And the fountains of the deep and the windows of the heaven were stopped, and the rain from the heaven was restrained, and the waters decreased in those days, and the ark rested upon the mountains of Ararat. And Noah then opened the windows of the ark, and Noah still called out to the Lord in that time, and he said, O Lord, who didst form the earth and the heavens and all that is therein, bring forth our souls from this confinement, and from the prison wherein that you have placed us, for I am much wearied with sighing. And the Lord hearkened to the voice of Noah, and said to him, When thou shalt have completed a full year, then you shall go forth. So the ark is going to be resting upon Mount Ararat, which we know because the Bible says that as well. But then it says, once you've completed a full year, then you can go out of the ark. So it's going to take a full year, according to Yasher, for the waters to recede all the way. At a revolution of a year, when a full year was complete to Noah's dwelling in the ark, the waters were dried up from the earth, and Noah put off the covering of the ark. At that time, on the 27th day of the second month, and the earth was dry, but Noah and his sons and those that were with him did not go out from the ark until the Lord told them. And the day came that the Lord told them to go out, and they all went out from the ark. And they went and returned, every one his way to his place. And Noah and his sons dwelt in the land that God told them, and they served the Lord all their days. And the Lord blessed Noah and his sons on their going out from the ark. And he said to them, So this is the first commandment right out of the gate of the ark. Be fruitful and multiply, fill all the earth, become strong and increase abundantly in the earth, multiply therein. And these are the names of the sons of Noah, Japheth, Ham, and Shem. And children were born to them after the flood, for they had taken wives before the flood. So remember, Noah's 3 sons, so Noah, his wife, Noah's 3 sons, each had a wife as well that were in the ark with them. So the descendants of Japheth, and remember the descendants of Japheth mostly populate the area of, the European nations. These are the sons of Japheth: Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, and Tyrus, 7 sons. And the sons of Gomer were Ashkenaz, Raphath, and Togarmah. And the sons of Magog were Elinath and Lubal. And the children of Madai were Ahon, Zelu, and Hazoni, and Lot. And the sons of Javan were Elisha, Tarshish, Hatim, and Dudonim. Okay, so it's going to name all of the sons and the descendants of Japheth. So there are about 460 men. Ham's descendants, and so these names are very important moving forward in all the stories of the Bible so that you know where these people are coming from. And sometimes you have to refer back to the genealogies to see who it's talking about. So Ham's descendants are Cush, which is modern-day Ethiopia, Mitzrayim, which is Egypt, Put, and Canaan, which is the land of Canaan. 4 sons. And the sons of Cush, now check this out. Okay, no, never mind. And the sons of Cush were Seba, Havilah, Sabat, Rama, Sateka, and the sons of Rama were Sheba and Dedan. And the sons of Mitzrayim were Lud, Anom, Pathros, Kaslath, and Chaftor. Trying to see if this is anything important here. Okay, so these are Ham's descendants. Shem's descendants are Elam. So the line of Shem, this is where we get the line of Messiah. Elam, Asher, Arpachshad, Lud, Aram, 5 sons. And the sons of Elam were Shushan, Mahul, and Harman. And the sons of Asher were Myras, Mokil. And the sons of Arpachshad were Shelach, Anar, and Achol. This is going to go on to be the sons of Shem. And then it repeats itself because now it's giving you the important line. So you have Shem begot Arpachshad, Arpachshad begot Shelach, and Shelach begot Eber. Eber is known to be the father of the Hebrews. And to Eber was born 2 children. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days the sons of men were divided, and in the latter days the earth was divided. So remember, later on, at the Tower of Babel, God spreads out all of the people. He confounds the languages and spreads out the people. Well, eventually, the continents divide as well. So at one point, the continents that we have today were together in one mass, but God broke them up. And the name of the second was Yoktan, meaning that in his days, the lives of the sons of men were diminished and lessened. So they named him after the fact that now the lives of men are diminishing. They're not living as long. Because remember, God said after the flood, you will only live 120 years. Okay. So Peleg, his brother, begot Yen. And Yen begot Serug. And Serug begot Nahor. And Nahor begot Terah. And Terah was 38 years old, and he begot Haran and Nahor. So pay attention. Now we're going to get into Nimrod. Remember, Nimrod is a very prominent figure during this time. You will also see him in reference to the Tower of Babel, and Nimrod is also in reference to the Epic of Gilgamesh, if you ever study the Epic of Gilgamesh. And Cush, the son of Ham, the son of Noah, took a wife in those days in his old age, and she bore a son and called his name Nimrod, saying, at that time the sons of men again began to rebel and transgress against God. And the child grew up, and his father loved him exceedingly, for he was the son of his old age. So check this out. This is the son of, okay, so the son of Cush, which is the son of Ham. This is Nimrod. And remember, the line of Ham, they basically populated Africa, okay? And the garments of skin which God had made for Adam and his wife. So remember, all the way back in the garden, that God made animal skins to cover up the nakedness of Adam and Eve. The garments of skin which God had made for Adam and his wife when they went out of the garden were given to Cush. How did this happen? For after the death of Adam and his wife, the garments were given to Enoch. Remember who Enoch was? The son of Jared. And when Enoch was taken up to God, he gave them to Methuselah, his son. And at the death of Methuselah, Noah took them and brought them into the ark. So Noah had these skins. And they were with him until he went out of the ark. And in their going out, Ham, remember the one that went in and saw his father's nakedness and told his brothers about it, and then Noah cursed his son Canaan? Ham stole these garments from Noah his father, and he took them and hid them from his brothers. And when Ham begot his firstborn Cush, he gave him the garments in secret, and they were with Cush many days. And Cush also concealed them from his sons and brothers, and when Cush had begotten Nimrod, he gave him those garments through his love for him. And Nimrod grew up, and when he was 20 years old, he put these garments on. So now he has the garments that God fashioned for Adam and Eve. And Nimrod became strong when he put on the garments. And God gave him might and strength. So it's kind of like Samson and his hair, and how he had like superhuman strength when his hair was long. So Nimrod is becoming strong when he puts on these garments. And he was a mighty hunter in the earth. Yes, he was a mighty hunter in the field, and he hunted the animals, and he built altars. And he offered them up as animals before the Lord. And Nimrod strengthened himself, and he rose up from amongst his brethren, and he fought the battles of his brethren against all their enemies round about. You will see throughout Scripture that those who were considered mighty hunters weren't really in line with God. And the Lord delivered all the enemies of his brethren into his hand, and God prospered him from time to time in his battles, and he reigned upon the earth. Therefore it became current in those days, when a man ushered forth those that he had trained up for battle, he would say to them, like God did to Nimrod, who was a mighty hunter in the earth, and who succeeded in the battles that prevailed against his brethren, that he delivered them from the hands of the enemy, so may God strengthen us and deliver us. So Nimrod is becoming a very popular warrior, you could say, and hunter. When Nimrod was 40 years old, at that time there was a war between his brethren and the children of Japheth. So Nimrod's tribes and the children of Japheth, they're warring against each other, so that they were in the power of their enemy. Excuse me. Need some water. Okay. And Nimrod went forth at that time, and he assembled all the sons of Cush and their families. About 460 men. He hired also from some of his friends and acquaintances about 80 men. And he gave them their hire, and he went with them to battle. And when he was on the road, Nimrod strengthened the hearts of the people that were with him. And he said to them, "Do not fear, neither be alarmed, for all our enemies will be delivered into our hands, and you may do with them as you please." And all the men that were there, about 500, and they fought against their enemies, and they destroyed them and subdued them. And Nimrod placed standing offers over them in their respective places. And he took some of their children as security, and they were all servants to Nimrod. So you have the children of Japheth, some of their children being taken by Nimrod, and now they're servants of Nimrod. And to his brethren, and Nimrod and all the people that were with him turned homeward. When Nimrod had joyfully returned from battle after having conquered his enemies, all his brethren together who were with him, together with those who knew him before, assembled to make him king over them, and they placed the royal crown upon his head. So now they're making Nimrod king over them because he's winning all these battles. And he set over his subjects the people, princes, judges, and rulers, as is the custom among kings. And he placed Terah, the son of Nahor, the prince of his host, and he dignified him and elevated him above all princes. And while he was reigning according to his heart's desire, and having conquered all his enemies around, he advised with his counselors to build a city for his palace, and they did so. And they found a large valley opposite to the east, and they built him a large, extensive city. And Nimrod called the name of the city that he built Shinar, for the Lord had vehemently shaken his enemies and destroyed them. And Nimrod dwelt in Shinar, and he reigned securely and fought with his enemies, and he subdued them. And he prospered in all his battles, and his kingdom became very great. And all the nations and tongues heard of his fame, and they gathered themselves to him, and they bowed down to the earth, and they brought him offerings, and he became their Lord and King. And they all dwelt with him in the city Shinar, and Nimrod reigned in the earth over all the sons of Noah. And they were all under his power and counsel. And all the earth was of one tongue and words of union. But Nimrod did not go in the ways of the Lord, and he was more wicked than all the men that were before him, from the days of the flood until those days. So, wait a minute. This is saying that Nimrod was worse than the people before the flood. And he made gods of wood and stone, and he bowed down to them, and he rebelled against the Lord, and taught all his subjects and the people of the earth his wicked ways. And Mardon, his son, was more wicked than his father. Is that even possible? And everyone that heard of the acts of Mardon, the son of Nimrod, would say concerning him, "From the wicked goeth forth wickedness." Therefore it became a proverb in the whole earth, saying, "From the wicked goes forth the wickedness," and it was current in the words of men from that time to this time. And Terah, the son of Nahor, prince of Nimrod's host, was in those days very great in the sight of the king and his subjects. So, just so you know, Terah, the son of Nahor, is from the line of Shem. So he's actually making him prince. One of his, somebody in his government over this city. Terah, the son of Nahor, prince of Nimrod's host, was in those days very great in the sight of the king and his subjects. Almost like Daniel was when they were in Babylon, that sort of thing. And the same with Joseph when he was sent into Egypt. And the king and princes loved him, and they elevated him very high. And Terah took a wife, and her name was Amthello, the daughter of Cornebo. And the wife of Terah conceived and bare him a son in those days. Terah was 70 years old when he begat him. And Terah called on the name of his son that was born to him, Abram. So this is where Abram comes in. Now you have Nimrod ruling all over the earth. And remember, he's teaching them all the wickedness. This is all the fallen angel knowledge that he's teaching them. And his father is ruling over this nation, or is the prince. Well, he's not ruling over, but he's a prince to Nimrod. And now he's giving birth to Abraham. Because the king had raised him in those days and dignified him above all the princes that were with him. And it was in the night that Abram was born, that all the servants of Terah and all the wise men of Nimrod and his conjoiners came and ate and drank in the house of Terah. And they rejoiced with him on that night. So Terah is having this baby and they're celebrating with him. And when all the wise men of the conjoiners went out from the house of Terah, they lifted up their eyes towards heaven that night and looked at the stars. And they saw, and behold, one very large star came from the east and ran in the heavens, and he swallowed up the 4 stars from the 4 sides of heaven. And all the wise men of the king and his conjoiners were astonished at this sight. And the sages understood this matter, and they knew it was important. Remember, they were sky watchers. The skies foretold things. They knew it was important. And they said to each other, "This only betokens the child that has been born to Terah this night, who will grow up and be fruitful, and multiply, and possess all the earth, he and his children forever. And he and his seed will slay great kings and inherit their lands." And the wise men and conjoiners went home that night, and in the morning all these wise men and conjoiners rose up early and assembled in an appointed house. And they spoke and said to each other, "Behold, the sight that we saw last night is hidden from the king. It has not been made known to him." So they know what they saw in the sky foretells about Abraham and what is going to happen with him. But Nimrod doesn't know yet. "And should this thing get known to the king in the latter days, he will say to us, 'Why have you concealed this matter from me?' And then we shall all suffer death. Therefore, now let us go and tell the king the sight which we saw, and the interpretation thereof, and we shall then remain clear." So they want to go tell the king, just in case later on he finds out and asks them why they didn't tell him. And they did so, and they all went to the king and bowed down to him unto the ground, and they said, "May the king live, may the king live. We heard that a son was born to Terah, the son of Nahor, the prince of thy host. And we yesternight came into the house, and we ate and drank and rejoiced with them that night. And when the servants went out from the house of Terah to go to their respective homes to abide there for the night, we lifted up our eyes to heaven, and we saw a great star coming from the east. And the same star ran with great speed and swallowed up 4 stars from the 4 sides of the heavens. And thy servants were astonished at the sight we saw, and we were greatly terrified. And we made our judgment upon the sight, and knew by our wisdom the proper interpretation thereof, that this thing applies to the child that was born to Terah, which is Abraham, who will grow up and multiply greatly, and become powerful, and kill all the kings of the earth, and inherit all their lands, he and his seed forever. And now, our Lord and King, behold, we have truly acquainted thee with what we have seen concerning this child. If it seems good to the king to give his father value for this child, we will slay him before he shall grow up and increase in the land, and his evil increase against us, that we and our children perish through this evil." So they're basically saying, we'll kill him so that this doesn't happen. And the king heard their words, and they seemed good in his sight, and he sent and called for Terah, and Terah came before the king. And the king said to Terah, now remember, Terah is a prince to Nimrod, "I have been told that a son was yesternight born to you, and after this manner was observed in the heavens at his birth. And now therefore give me thy child, and we may slay him before this evil springs up against us. And I will give you a value for your son, thy house full of silver and gold." I will give you silver and gold as long as we can kill this child that is prophesied. And Terah answered the king and said to him, "My lord and king, I have heard thy words, and thy servant shall do all that the king desireth." But my lord and king, I will tell thee that what happened to me yesternight, that I may see what advice the king will give his servant, and then I will answer the king upon what he has just spoken. And the king said, Speak. And Terah said to the king, Ayon, son of Mored, came to me yesternight, saying, Give unto me the great and beautiful horse that the king gave thee, and I will give you silver and gold and straw and provender for its value. And I said to him, Wait till I see the king concerning your words, and behold, whatever the king saith, I will do. And now, my lord and king, behold, I have made this thing known to you, and the advice which my king will give unto his servant will I follow. And the king heard the words of Terah, and his anger was kindled, and he considered him in the light of a fool. And the king answered Terah and said to him, Art thou so silly, ignorant, or deficient in understanding to do this thing, to give this beautiful horse that I gave you for silver and gold, or even for straw and provender? So basically, Terah's trying to trick him. He's saying, this guy came to me and he said, to give me this horse, I'll give you silver and gold for this beautiful horse that the king gave you. So he's telling this to the king, and the king is saying, Are you so ignorant and silly and deficient of understanding that you would give this beautiful horse I gave you for silver and gold? Art thou so short of silver and gold that thou shouldest do the thing, because thou cannot obtain straw and provender to feed thy horse? And what is silver and gold to you, or straw and provender, that thou shouldest give away thy fine horse which I gave thee, like which there is none to be had in the whole earth? I gave you this beautiful horse. Why would you take silver and gold for it? And the king left off speaking, and Terah answered the king, saying, Like unto this has the king spoken to thy servant. I beseech thee, my lord and king, what is this which thou sayest unto me, saying, Give thy son, which thou may slay him, and I will give you silver and gold for his value? Basically, he's saying it's the same thing, Nimrod. You're telling me you're going to give me silver and gold for my son. This is basically the same thing that you're telling me. I don't want to give my son up for silver and gold. And what should I do with silver and gold after the death of my son? Whom shall inherit me? Surely, then at my death, the silver and gold will go return to the king who gave it. And when the king heard the words of Terah and the parable which he brought concerning the king, it grieved him greatly, and he was vexed at this thing, and his anger burned within him. And Terah saw that the anger of the king was kindled against him. And he answered the king, saying, All that I have is in the king's power. Whatever the king desireth to do to his servant, that let him do. Yet even my son, he is in the king's power, without value in exchange, he and his 2 brethren that are older than he. And the king said to Terah, No, but I will purchase your son for a price. And Terah answered the king, saying, I beseech thee, lord and king, to let thy servant speak a word before thee, and let the king hear the word of thy servant. And Terah said, Let my king give me 3 days' time, till I consider this matter within myself, and consult with my family concerning the words of the king. And he pressed the king greatly to agree to this. So he's like, I want 3 days to talk to my family and see what I should do about killing my son. And the king, Nimrod, hearkened to Terah, and he did so, and he gave him 3 days' time, and Terah went out from the king's presence, and he came home to his family, and spoke to them all the words of the king, and the people were greatly afraid. And it was on the 3rd day that the king sent to Terah, saying, Send me thy son for a price that I spoke to you, and shouldest thou not do this, I will send and slay all thy household. Shall you not even have a dog remaining? And Terah hastened, and he took a child from one of his servants. So he took one of his servants' child, which his handmaid had borne to him that day. And Terah brought the child to the king and received the value for him. So he takes his handmaid's child, gives it to the king, and gets the silver and gold for the child that's not Abraham. And the Lord was with Terah in this matter, and that Nimrod might not cause Abraham's death. And the king took the child from Terah, and with all his might dashed his head to the ground, for he thought it had been Abram. And this was concealed from him from that day, and it was forgotten by the king. Such a mighty king, and he's afraid of a child. And it was forgotten by the king, and it was the will of providence not to suffer Abraham's death. And Terah took Abraham his son secretly, together with his mother and nurse, and concealed them in the cave. And he brought them their provisions monthly. And the Lord was with Abraham in the cave, and he grew up. And Abram was in the cave for 10 years. And the king and his princes, soothsayers and sages, thought that the king had killed Abram. So that leaves us into the life of Abram in the book of Yasher. And that's chapter 9 is going to go into the Tower of Babel and Abram as well. So we'll finish that up next Shabbat. We'll read our chapter, and we'll read this chapter together next Shabbat. I'm telling you, things during that time were a little interesting, weren't they? I mean, they were very interesting. Sandy, if you're still watching, please private message me your address so I can send you those DVDs. I hope you guys are enjoying the Bible. I just want you to be excited about the Bible because, look, the Bible is not boring. It's just not boring. And if you read it, you'll see. I mean, people think that we've just progressively gotten more cuckoo in these last days, but remember, God works in cycles, so we're just going back to Cuckooville that was in the beginning. So as it was in the days of Noah, so it shall be, when the Son of Man returns. So if things are getting crazy in the world, it's because it was spoken and it's meant to be. Just don't let you and your household become like them, or become like Lot, who's, definitely lukewarm and straddling the fence. But I'm glad you guys were able to make it tonight. Thank you so much for being here. I hope to see you next Shabbat. I might do a video on Wednesday. We might do a wind down Wednesday video. God's willing, if something God puts it upon my heart to do another video. I'm trying to do more videos. I'm going to try to do more videos because I feel like once a week is just not enough. So I'm hoping to do more videos. Maybe I'll do short videos, like maybe every morning, just a short, quick video every morning or evening. We'll see. God's willing. I don't ever want to make promises because you just never know what the schedule of the week will bring. So I'm glad you guys were able to come read the Bible with me tonight. And like I said, hope to see you next Shabbat. Hopefully, maybe sometime during the week. God bless you and have a wonderful Shabbat Shalom.